Okay, so all right. I hope everyone can see this my slides. Can Dr. Asri, can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. My voice is clear, yeah? Okay, Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good evening, good afternoon to everyone. Okay. Dr. Asri have mentioned that we have met before, so nice to meet you guys again. Okay, so hopefully for this presentation, I will be discussing about infrared heating, ohmic heating, and also radio frequency. So I have about 1 hour. I have about 70 slides. So please bear with me, yeah. Right. Kenapa ni? I think it would not show my picture for today. But I guess everyone have known me. Okay, I'm a lecturer at the Department of Process and Food Engineering in Faculty of Engineering, University Putra Malaysia. I have been a senior lecturer at that department for about coming to 10 years next year. Okay, inshallah. Right. So this is actually non-thermal food processing is actually my PhD project. It's very my not to say I'm not I'm the expert, but I have a bit of knowledge on non-thermal processing. Okay, so the learning outcomes for today is to basically for you guys to be able to differentiate between the thermal and non-thermal processing. Okay, to evaluate any critical parameters in non-thermal technologies and its successful implementation in producing safe food, and of course, to discuss conversion of conventional food processing technology that incorporates non-thermal food technologies. Okay, so this will be done via assessment. I think I could share with you guys the presentation that you guys need to present during the 14th of June, which is basically the future outlook of non-thermal processing in Indonesia. Because I'm not quite familiar with the industry in Indonesia at the moment, so it will be good. It would be a very good knowledge for me to also understand, okay, how is the food industry in Indonesia and how you could implement non-thermal technology within that conventional food technology. Okay, so you have to choose first what would be your non-thermal technology that you would like to focus on, and what would be the important parameters. Okay, then you have to give me a specific example. Okay, let's say if you were looking into a juice factory or maybe some other food industry, that you are able to convert from the conventional thermal technology into a non-thermal technology. So please also include food processing flowchart. This would be very good. Okay, I would be able to understand better, and you guys too, and your other friends would also be able to understand better. And of course, you can relate the proposed technology into solving food security in Indonesia and how to convince, Indonesia consumer, how to promote this new technology to Indonesian consumer. Okay, so the class presentation, sorry, is not on the 9, is going to be on the 14. Okay, so you would have to form a group with 3 to 4 members per group, and you have to prepare a presentation about 15 minutes per group. Then you can present via Zoom. Okay, any question you may ask me, or maybe you can ask also Dr. Asri. She's quite familiar with this method of assessment, right? So I think that will be it for the class presentation that we will see on the 14th of June. For today, okay, besides that, okay, so these are basically my references. The latest references are actually Handbook of Food Preservation. It's actually by Muhammad Shafi Rahman. It's the 3rd edition, so you guys could try to find this online and try to read it if you are able to. Okay, other than that, I refer a lot to Prof. Chauhan books, okay, on the non-thermal food processing, and of course the Enrique Ortega Rivas. right? So these are my references. So as an introduction, okay, basically what you are looking at is the newest technology that we have in the food industry. But a disclaimer here, okay, in Malaysia, the food industry is actually, the majority of owner in food industry in Malaysia is actually by small and medium enterprise. The percentage are about 60 to 70%. So needless to say, having the small and medium industry, they are very conventional food processing. They use simpler method. They use a lot of cooking, okay, because they lack the capacity or the financial abilities to incorporate newer technology. And of course, they also lack experts in this field. So what you are looking at is actually a lot of this food industry in the Western countries, especially in the United States, where you could see a lot of food industry that has incorporated non-thermal food processing there. Okay, because they invested a lot, they have the financial means, the capital to invest into all this technology, and of course, they're experts for it. Okay. So a lot of this food industry have an experts in food processing, food process engineers. Okay, I myself a food engineers. Okay, we distinguish ourselves from the food technologies actually in the matter of we come up with the new innovation of food processing. Okay, so that's the difference between food technologies and food engineers. So food process engineering comprises a series of unit operation traditionally applied in the food industry. Okay, one major component of this operation relates to the use of heat. So conventional methods are using heat, right? So directly or indirectly, which has one aim or one objective is to have a safe food. Okay, food that is free from contamination, doesn't have any microbiological organism that can give you foodborne illnesses, right? So thermal processes are able to control the microbial population, but it can also affect the biochemical qualities of your food. So basically, having seafood sometimes may not give you a very nutritional food for you to consume. Okay, so basically you're just eating fibers, right? Other than that, it does not give you any nutritional values. So that is why the food engineers now try to come up with a balance. Okay, so basically you would have the balance of food safety and of course food quality. But having that balance is very tough, right? Okay, so for the last 3 decades, I've witnessed the advent and of course the adaptation of the new non-thermal processing that produce microbiologically safe food, but with minimal alteration to the sensory and the nutritional properties. And some of these techniques have eliminated totally the thermal component in food processing, but they are considered as an alternative method, because obviously thermal processing is still is the way they are still using it. Okay, so before we go on any further, I would like to see to discuss a bit on the history of food processing. So the origin of food processing may be placed in the ancient Egypt by this figure here, if you can see. Okay, the writings on the wall shown how they symbolize the history of culture of food processing. Okay, so basically they would use crude processing methods where you slaughter your animals and then you perhaps sun dry them, or maybe use salt or maybe fermentation. Okay, so it is not only on the Egyptian civilization but also in the Rome civilization, Chaldean, okay, China, and a Greek civilization. Okay, so modern food processing, as you can see this guy here, this is the grandfather of pasteurization, which is Louis Pasteur. He come up with the new technology of pasteurization of food, especially during the earliest invention was on the milk pasteurization. So that is why you could see the words pasteurization are usually connected to milk processing. Okay, So this was actually found in 1862. So it's quite far off, right? Okay. And then this is actually the innovation during the 20th and the 21st century, because during that time we are looking into World War II. Okay, so there's a lot of men that is going into war, so that they left wife and their kids at home. So the wife has to become a working mother, career parent. So a lot of convenience food are being produced at that time. Okay, so a lot of this, what we call the RTE, or ready to eat food, okay, that can be easily be reheated using microwave. You would see also a lot of canned food, okay, such as spam, sardines, and other than that, they also produces food for the army that was going to war, because they would like to have their own kind of food. So they would package it like this, and then they would send it overseas. Okay, and then of course we move into the advancement of the 21st century. In the 22nd century, you see a lot of pasteurization products. You see also omic processed food, eggs that are being pasteurized, although we sometimes kadang-kadang terfikir macam mana telur tu itu di pasteurize tanpa telur tu dimasak. The eggs are not cooked, but yet it is pasteurized. So you have to think about the methods that they are being using, which is a very good method, okay, to make sure that there's no salmonella or any E. coli microorganism on the shell of the eggs. And then this one here is actually a barrel of vessel. Okay, we put in packaged product for HPP, or high pressure processing. And potatoes here are being treated with infrared, now with pulse electric field. Okay, so there's a lot of advancement that has been done. So if you look at food pasteurization, the earliest of food pasteurization are basically using heat. So when we look at the pasteurization techniques, there are three. Okay, so there are the low temperature pasteurization, the high temperature, and of course the ultra pasteurization. Of course, when you look at the ultra and the high temperature, you would have seafood, but the nutritional quality of it is degrading. Okay, if you look at the high temperature pasteurization, it mentioned here this milk is difficult to digest because the protein has been denatured, so your stomach cannot digest them. So that is why there are a lot of newer technologies that have come in to help with this pasteurization method. Okay, if you look at food pasteurization method, there are three major techniques. One is the inhibition, meaning you kill all the microorganism. Okay, you inhibit any growth of microorganism. Inactivation, you just kill them for a while, make it dormant to a minimal level, but still safe for your food consumption. And of course, if you want to avoid recontamination, you would have to have a very good food safety management system. Right, so the ones that I'll be discussing for this week and next week lectures are basically on the irradiation, electrifying measures, pressure treatment, light, sound, and of course the magnetic field. Okay, so these are basically sterilization, okay, to the process to remove or destroy all viable forms of microbial life, including the bacterial spore. We have always used the food safety objective approach. Basically, after the sterilization methods, we test for any microbial growth. Okay, so these are basically the pasteurization. Okay, so prior to 2002, only heat or thermal pasteurization that is considered as the only pasteurization method. But after that, they have considered the non-thermal methods, such as ultraviolet. Of course, there's ozone, irradiation, and other types of pasteurization. Okay. So ultimately, what we want is we want food that is safe, but of course, nutritional quality that is still viable. We still want all the nutritional quality that is within the food itself. So less processed food, especially in demand nowadays, okay, because our consumer are more educated, so they understand better, right, the nutritional quality. And of course, you don't want any adverse effects. You would like for your carrot juice to come out as orange as it before. Okay, so you don't want any change in color. You also don't want any flavor deterioration and decline in nutritional quality. That is always, the issue with the thermal treatment. Okay, so functional food, of course, is the byproduct of this non-thermal. Okay, sometimes we like to call it functional food because at times all this bioactive compound are extracted together. That is the so to say the side effects of non-thermal. So that's why non-thermal are the way to go now, because not only they produce seafood, not only you also can retain the nutritional quality, but at times you can have extra nutritional qualities or nutritional benefits to your food. So it is an increasing trend worldwide, even in Malaysia. So the consumer are moving towards better lifestyle and of course good health. So because we look at the purchase intention of our consumer nowadays, they like to see the health part of your food, the perceived value that they are buying, the food safety concern. That is why when the food has GMP logo, when they have HACCP logo, okay, those are the higher quality product. Okay, so that's why they would buy it. And of course, the religious factor. Okay. Right, so for this week lecture, I will only be covering on the ohmic heating, the infrared heating, and of course the radio frequency. I will not be discussing microwave, but every now and then microwave will be included into the discussion as a comparison method to these methods, right? So this is what we call the novel thermal. It's not we are not eliminating the thermal aspect of it. Okay, it is still there in terms of high rise of temperature during the treatment, but we call it novel thermal because the temperature that was increased is not as high as cooking method. Okay, and most often it can be controlled. So that's why we call it the novel thermal method, and the non-thermal method we'll be discussing it during the next week lecture, right? So the first lecture, the first topic of the day is actually ohmic heating. This is the industrial setting of ohmic heating. Okay, so basically this is the pipe. They will put the electrode, okay, to treat your food products. So if you look at it, all of this equipment here, the very crucial part is only on the yellow pipe here. Okay, so that is how ohmic heating is used to treat your food product. Okay, before I go on any further, I would like to actually compare. Okay, if you like to compare the heating method, if you look at the conventional heating method, the energy is transferred through the wall of the reaction vessel. If you were to have, your pans, your cooking pots, okay, you put on top of your gas. Okay, so then it will emit fire. So the fire is actually in terms of heat energy that will be transferred from the fire itself and to your cooking pots, right? The wall of your cooking pots, and then the energy itself will dissipate through your food product. Okay, so that is a very direct heating method. But if you look at the microwave irradiation or microwave heating, it's basically the direct and internal absorption of microwave radiation by the molecules itself. So that is why your food product needs to have water in it, all right, for it to be able to absorb all this microwave energy and for it to dissipate in terms of heat. Okay. If you look at the inductive, this is the induction method. So in the induction method is basically what we call an indirect heating method. So you would have an alternating field, alternating current, or alternating electric current field. Okay, so then it will produce heat and then it will goes to the wall of your cooking pot. And so in comparison to the conventional and inductive method, so conventional is considered as a direct heating, induction is considered as indirect heating. Okay, so as for ohmic heating, you would have two electrodes, okay, that is being submerged into your food product. You consider this vessel as your cooking pot. You would have 2 electrodes, okay? You put inside your cooking pots, and these 2 electrodes will give out what we call an alternating electric current, okay? And then this alternating electric current will produce what we call a Joule heating or ohmic heating. So the electrodes itself will be in contact with the medium, so we call this a direct method of heating. Okay, it's almost the same as conventional heating, but in this case, it doesn't use any fire. So you don't have any gas. Basically, you have an electric current that is passing through the electrodes, okay, in between this, and then it will kill off all the microorganisms inside your food. So the advantages of ohmic heating is actually, most often is being used for a liquid product. So let's say, you're cooking chicken curry. Let's say if you want to heat up your pot of water, then it's very good to use ohmic heating, where the electric currents can be generated and can be passed through your food, okay, so that the heat can uniformly goes to every molecules of your food product, okay? So temperatures are sufficient. It can also produce ultra high temperature, okay, but not with the degradation of nutritional values, just like the ultra high temperature does. Okay, so that's why ohmic heating are much preferable in comparison to UHT. Okay, no hot surfaces. If you were to compare to microwave, most often you would have cold spots in your microwave food product. Okay, but using ohmic heating, you would have a sufficient heating and of course uniform heating also, so resulting a low risk of product damage from burning or over processing. And the energy conversion efficiencies are very high, and you have relatively low capital costs, and it has the potential to provide shelf stable food. Okay, how to design ohmic heating? So basically you need to have electrodes, 2 electrodes, okay, a power source, and of course a means to confine food samples. So basically you either have a vessel, cooking pots, anything, okay, so you can use it. So important design consideration. So you need to have an electrode configuration, meaning what does it say? Okay, let's say you look at this figure on the right here, okay, you would have 2 electrodes. If the electrodes are moving closer to the middle part of the food, so everything that is in the middle part would be, would have a very high efficiency rate. So the heating rate will be higher, would be faster. So that's why electrode configuration is very important. The distance between these 2 electrodes, the heater geometry, okay, you could have maybe instead of having 2, maybe you could put 4. Maybe you could also have 6 if your pots are very big in dimension, okay? And other than that, the frequency, the power, and of course the voltage of your food product is voltage of your electricity generator would be very important, okay? And sorry, it's not product velocity, it's actually product viscosity, okay? So the thickness or the viscosity of your product will play a very important role in making sure that you would have an efficient heating method. Okay, so important parameters, like I've mentioned before, product properties, electrical conductivity, these are very important, density, specific heat, and of course the viscosity. So type of product, okay, so liquid would fare much better with ohmic heating in comparison to solid, okay, because why? You need a very good electrical conductivity, okay, so your food should be able to move the electrical current within your food itself. So that's why at times ionic components, having the salt components, the water components is very important in your food product for your electric current to be moved about, right? So fats, lipids, and alcohol will decrease, okay, the efficiency of, or will decrease the electrical conductivity of your food, okay? So electrical conductivity is linearly correlated with temperature. So when you have a very high temperature, sorry, when you have a very high electrical conductivity, you will also have a very high temperature. But but by lowering the frequency of alternating current, okay, you can also increase the electrical conductivity of your food. Okay, so these are all how the parameters that can be used um, to have an optimum ohmic heating method, right? So you need to make sure that your food product has a very good conductivity of electricity, okay, and the viscosity of it, the density, the particle size, the shape, and the orientation to the electric field. Okay, so when solid particles and fluid medium have a similar electrical conductivity, the component with lower heat capacity will tend to heat faster. So let's say if you were to have tomato sauce and if you were to have water, so water would have a very high electrical conductivity, so it will heat up very fast in comparison to your tomato sauce. Okay, so high density and specific heat of fluids are conducive to slower heating, and higher viscosity fluid tends to result in faster ohmic heating than in lower viscosity fluid. Right. So this is one of the example, if you want to see at the heat generation. Okay, this one is at 90 volt. This one is at 120 volt, and this one is at 150 volt. You could see if at 90 volt, the temperature, the increment of temperature or the temperature homogeneity is a bit constant and a bit slow moving. But when you have it higher voltage, about 120 voltage, is there's a peak over here and it's quite fast. And if you were to compare 120 and 150, this one is much faster. So if you were to have a faster heating rate, then you need to increase your voltage, right? So how do we do this? Actually, how to make sure your ohmic heating are homogeneous or uniform heating is basically by modeling them. This is by using a computational fluid dynamics software. So you could see whether there's a cold spot or not. Okay, so if you could see here, this is a pipe actually. So if this is a quadrant of a pipe, okay, so this is the cold spot, right, where the temperature is a bit low in comparison to the middle part of it. So the middle part would have higher temperature. This one would have a lower temperature. So the main objective is for the whole of this pipe to have a uniform heating. We don't want any blue spots and red spots where there's a very, very high gap there. Okay, another thing, if you look at this example below, this one is a beef slab. Okay, a beef burger, right? So before tempering, okay, at one step of 400 volt, you can see there's a lot of cold spots here, and the heating is only comes from the side, okay, because of this metal plates here, right? So, but if you look at the three steps where you have the 400 volt, you have the 200 volt, and then of course the 100 volts, the preheating steps helps in order for you to get a bit of a homogeneous of a cooking method. Okay, if you look at this here, okay, so the cooking method is more or less homogeneous, right? So the complexity of ohmic heating, the issue is that if you were to have food that has different electrical conductivity, then you would have an issue of getting a uniform heating, right? So numerous model has been developed, but the understanding of how the ohmic heating plays a role in your food cooking is very small, still very small. Okay, so we need a lot more of research to do. Okay, so microbial inactivation kinetics. If you look at this here, so there's a lot of research that has been done and it's quite successful. Okay, so E. coli, Salmonella, Typhimurium, higher frequency, the faster the inactivation. So undetectable level of microorganism after 71 to 82 seconds. So it is manageable. It can be done. It's just a matter of if you look at the media here, okay, so this one is a tomato-based salsa, which is a liquid form. So that's why it's quite efficient. But if you were to look at maybe in terms of muscle, okay, this one is a solid product. So the aerobic count was only reduced by 1.7 log count. Okay, so it's not very good in that sense. It's not very efficient in that sense. Okay. Okay. The very important thing is to also eliminate any electrolysis. Electrolysis is actually what happens when ohmic heating at a high voltage. Okay, the electric current itself can cause electrolysis. So electrolysis involve movement of ion towards electrodes and of opposite charge. Okay, so cation towards cathode, okay, and ions toward the anode, right? So cation is actually the negative charge and the anion is the positive charge. So when the electric current passes through the food, which contains water and dissolved salt, this component can undergo electrolysis, resulting in chemical reaction at the electrodes. So what's the issue here is that it can lead to chemical changes in food. So it can affect the flavor, the color, nutritional value. The issue is oxidative, okay? So usually at the anion stage here, it can produce oxygen that can cause lipid oxidation. And the cation itself can sometimes produce hydrogen ions. And this will also affect on the taste of your food product. Okay, so electrolysis can generate potentially harmful substances such as chlorine from salt, and if not properly controlled. So electrolysis can also lead to degradation of electrodes that can contaminate your food with electrode material. So once you use ohmic heating, these are the parameters that you need to check also, okay, besides the microbial inactivation. Okay, and so because of this electrolysis, it also degrades vitamin, especially vitamin C. So if you look at this graph here, okay, the higher the watts that has been used in this research, okay, the higher the degradation of beta carotene. Okay, beta carotene is the orange color in carrot, right? So most often the carrot color would turn into brown. Okay, so application of ohmic heating, most often you use it for, of course, the to inactivate microbes. Okay, but at times you can also improve food color. You can also use it to extract any essential oil. You can also enhance the phenolic compound. Okay, so this is the extra advantage of ohmic heating. So basically you would have extra bioactive compound in your food product, and of course the starch processing. Okay, and another method, another usage of ohmic is also you can use it as a sensor. Okay, so in this product, let's say if you were to have a sausage here, it can be applied to several food that can affect the micro and macro structure of your food. So this one, it can be detectable using texture analysis. Okay. So other applications, you can also use it to blanch your vegetable, which you can, inactivate several enzymes that is unwanted. Evaporation, you can evaporate water very efficient using ohmic heating. Fermentation, starch gelatinization, of course dehydration, part of the drying process, and of course the extraction also. Okay, so these are some of the commercialized ohmic heating that you see in the market now. Okay, this one is by HRS Technology. It's quite, this one in Japan. So it's quite, looks very sophisticated. Okay, they use it to produce, to pasteurize juice. This one is actually under Scambia Turbico. This is an Italian product. Okay, and future research direction is basically you need to find the optimized temperature and the heating time, okay, that are non-invasive. And of course, you also need to develop temperature measurement that are non-invasive and do not interfere with the electric current. The issue is now, what you have is the data logger of your temperature measurement. You cannot put it directly inside your cooking vessel when the electrodes are producing electrical current. Okay, so basically you would get electrical shock that. So the issue is internal monitoring. We want to know what's the internal temperature. So that is why modeling is very important now, but this is only a simulation of it. Okay, so you need to also develop models that correlate process parameters and with the design of the properties of the product, and to standardize the ohmic heating. Okay, and to determine the influence of temperature in electrical field on the key pathogenic microorganism, and of course to develop knowledge necessary to quantify effects of electrical mass. And you need to also identify if there's any electrolysis that happens during your treatment of your food product. Okay, so the second subtopic for today is actually is infrared heating. So what is infrared actually? So infrared uses in electromagnetic wave. So electromagnetic wave looks something like this. Okay, so you would have electric field and it produces a magnetic field. So that's why it is named as electromagnetic. Based on the electrical current, it produces a magnetic field. Okay, so it is a highly energy efficient. It uses less water and of course very environmentally friendly in comparison to the conventional heating. It is characterized by uniform heating, high heat transfer rate, low heating time, low energy consumption, improved product quality, and of course, food safety. And infrared is used in a lot of food manufacturing processes such as drying, boiling, heating, peeling, polyphenol recovery, freeze drying, antioxidant recovery, microbiological inhibition, sterilization of grains, bread, roasting of food, and manufacturing of juice, and of course, cooking of your food. So what is in electromagnetic spectrum? If you look at this spectrum here, okay, so radio is somewhere around here. So it has a long wavelength, so it has a very low frequency, and it uses a low energy or produces low energy. Okay, but as you move quite further up to the gamma ray, if you could see, this has a very short wavelength, okay, because you could see the gap is closer to each other, and it produces very high energy and of course high frequency. So where is infrared? Infrared is here. Okay, so this is a microwave. So infrared basically has a shorter wavelength in comparison to microwave. It has a higher energy and of course a bit higher frequency also. Okay, so if you were to compare, okay, ultraviolet, infrared, and microwave. So basically microwave, what it does is basically, okay, the ion or the water molecules inside the food product, it will rotates about each other. So basically it would absorb any radiation from the microwave itself, and then it will produces high energy so that your product will move up and down and move about in your microwave. But for infrared, the water molecules only vibrates. Okay, although it has higher energy in comparison to microwave, but the vibration of this molecule produces higher energy. Okay, so we have three different types of infrared. One is what we call the near infrared. Okay, if you look at the spectrum of wavelength here, near infrared is somewhere here. Okay, so it's between 0.75 to 1.4 micrometers at temperature below 400 degrees C. And you would also have the mid infrared. Medium is between 1.4 to 3 micrometers at the temperature between 400 to 1000 degrees C. And far infrared, this is what the wavelength used in the industrial field. Okay, so it's between 3 to 1000 micrometer at a temperature above 1000 degrees C. In industrial field, what I meant by it is actually when those high mechanical industry, they would use this far infrared rays. But for us, usually it's below the temperature of 400 degrees C. So one of the fun fact is that 66% of our solar radiation is actually infrared. So what we are absorbing is basically an infrared. And the rest of the percentage, the 34% of our solar radiation is actually the visible ray and the UV ray. Okay. So the mechanism is actually the infrared will penetrate your food product, and then whatever the water that is inside your food product will vibrate. Okay, so the vibration movement of your water molecule at a frequency of about 60 to 150,000 megahertz can cause heating. Okay, so the vibration of that movement of water will cause heating. So basically, what you will see is increment of temperature, but it's not as high as microwave. Okay, so electromagnetic radiation causes thermal movement of the molecules, but conversion efficiency is high, dependent on the frequency. That can cause electron chemical changes in radiation absorbing molecules, such as chemical bonding, electronic excitation, and dissipation of absorbed energy in the form of less heat. So what is it trying to say is that although you would have an increment of temperature, but because of the vibration of that water molecules, as soon as it absorbs the heat, it will, of course, dissipate the heat. Okay, so the efficiency of converting absorbed energy into heat is very high at, is very great at high wavelength in infrared radiation. So electromagnetic radiation produced by infrared deepens the food by few millimeters in comparison to the microwave. Okay, so if you could see here, if you have more water in your food product, so it would absorb more. Okay, and as you have lipids, sugars, protein, okay, protein has the highest, I think, absorption rate of wavelength, right? So strong absorption is due to the longitudinal vibration. Longitudinal means vertical vibration, okay, up and down, up and down. The radiation absorption of the material is not saturated, although it is still considered radiation, okay, but it's not saturated, meaning whatever the radiation that is being absorbed by the water molecule, as I've mentioned before, as soon as it absorbs, it will dissipate to the environment as soon as possible. Okay, so it will transfer the energy to the surrounding environment. So it is only absorbed by a thin layer of organic matter and waste. So heating is superficial, it's only on the surface of it. So the process of infrared heating is faster because energy is transferred from the heating source to the food simultaneously. So therefore, you don't need any extra usage of hot air. Okay, so you don't need any transfer of your heat. So basically, water molecules will absorb and then release the heat. Okay. So the advantages of it is basically, as I've mentioned before, highly energy efficient, less water consuming, environmental friendly, very low energy cost, and the size of the infrared equipment is often very small, and the thermal efficiency is very high, so it is considered as a valuable energy source. Okay, and I've mentioned before, since the radiation is not saturated within your food product or the food molecules, so it did not have enough energy to damage any DNA of your food. Okay, so you do not need to worry if you were to consume any infrared food. So the energy is directly concentrated on the material to be heated and does not produce any volatile organic compound, carbon monoxide, and nitrogen oxide. It does not need any heat recycling and does not need an isolated system. So basically, it preserves the vitamins, okay, has very little flavor loss and no heating of the surrounding air. So it's very safe to use. Okay, so for the US FDA, United States of Food and Drug Administration, has indicated that infrared radiation can be used in food processing and it is not considered as ionizing, right? And it improves the quality of the treated product, improves the safety, and reduces the consumption of chemicals, water, and of course, the manufacturing efficiency. Okay, so there are two traditional sources. One is the electric heaters and another one is the gas heater. Okay, so the one that is very good for your usage is, of course, if you were to use the electric heater, because it has a widespread wavelength, ease of control, fast heating rate, clean energy. Okay, so infrared that are being produced is more flexible, and of course you can use it for any particular application. And infrared radiation can also emit wavelength ranging from short to long depending on the voltage applied. And the efficiency of electric infrared heater is about 40 to 70% in comparison to the gas heater that is about only 30 to 50%. So if you look at this figure on the right, this is the heat distribution in comparison to the conventional heating and infrared technology. So it's a bit like microwave, right? If you could see it. Okay, but on microwave emits radiation, ionizing radiation dipanggil, they call it. But for infrared, it's basically a heat, the excitations of your molecules, the generation of wavelength, sorry. Okay. Right. So if you want to design, so basically you need to have this. Okay, it's just very straightforward. Instead of using gas, natural gas, you can use an electric current. Okay, so you would have electrical circuit, and you can also use a turntable where you can put your food product here, and this is the emitters. Okay, so your wavelength will be contained within these two emitters. So infrared radiation is produced by an electric heater by passing an electrical current through a high resistance wire such as nichrome wire, iron chromium wire, or tungsten filament. So at the moment, they have produces what they call a lighting. So a light that can emit infrared wavelength. So incandescent lamp that emit infrared radiation are classified as short wave emitters. Quartz tube are classified as medium, and resistant elements are classified as long wave emitters. Okay, so these are some of the example, right? This one is the principle of microwave heating. So you basically would have microwave radiation that goes inside your food product, and it excites the wave water molecules. But for the infrared, okay, this looks something like this. If you want to use it in industrial setting, you could also do it like this. Okay, you can use a gas, so you would have vibrating conveyor, and okay, so the infrared can be emitted from the top. In United States now, what they are using infrared is for decontamination of apples, of oranges, on agricultural products. Okay, so other design, same thing. Okay, let's say if you were to have a moisture rich product, like pickles, for instance, if you know pickles, okay, so you would have a stainless steel tray here. So infrared heater will come up from the above, and then it will treat your product. Okay, so this is one of design. Okay, this one uses a near infrared, okay, for blanched carrot. And this one is the medium infrared heat source to dry the blanched carrot. Okay, important parameters. You need to remember that irradiation, okay, the radiation actually separated into three categories. Okay, so one is irradiation, one is the reflected radiation, and one is the transmitted. Basically, transmitted is the absorbed radiation, reflected is scattering of radiation, and irradiation is what we call the ionizing radiation itself. So for you to calculate them, is basically you need to calculate the reflected radiation R plus A, the absorbed radiation, and of course the transmitted radiation. So infrared heating depends on the spectrum, because energy emitted from the emitter consists of different wavelength, and part of the wavelength depends on the source temperature and of course the lamp emission. So electromagnetic radiation is weakened as a result of absorption by the medium as well as the scattering radiation. Okay, so dissipation of radiant energy in form of heat produces a warming of the surface of the food. And of course, penetration depth depends on the thickness of your product, the water activity, the product component, and the wavelength of the infrared radiation. So infrared absorption is differentiated depending on protein, fat, carbohydrates, and water content. Okay, and another thing is that it depends on the shape and the sizes. For instance, the example that I mentioned before on the United States in United States, they use infrared to decontaminate apples. So all the apples has to be in homogeneous in terms of size. Okay, you cannot small, big, small, big, small, big. It all need to have the same size for the infrared to be efficient and homogeneous. Right? Okay. So these are some of the applications of infrared. You could use it for drying, enzyme inactivation. You could also sterilize your food product. You could also modify the physicochemical property of your food, such, for instance, starch. Okay, you can also cook your food product, and for extraction of bioactive compound from the waste. Okay, and of course, you can also use it for parboiling or pre-treatment of your rice. Okay, another application of infrared is you can use it as a sensor. Okay, so this is one of the application of it. So basically you would have a rice or your rice grains, and then you would put near infrared probe. So this would come out in terms of sensor that will be reflected on your computer screen, and it will come up with the results of your characteristic of your rice itself. Okay, so these are some of the commercialized infrared heating. So this is what we call a tray infrared heating. So it's for dehydration of your fruit product. This is some of it. So this one, it combines microwave heating and also infrared heating. Okay. So this is what it looks like. It's tunnel. So you put your product from one end, it will come out to the other end. So future research direction. It will be exploited to extract essential oil, distillation of water, and heating food by continuous method. And basically, we can also combine them with magnetic, ultrasonic, thermal, okay, in not just microwave heating. And infrared can be desirable to sterilize food packaging with transparent packaging, and you need to study the integration of radiation with refractance window drying for the purpose of increasing energy efficiency. Right. I think I have about 20 more slides. Okay. Okay, radio frequency heating is basically also known as dielectric loss heating or dielectric heating. Okay, so radio frequency is between 10 to 50 megahertz. Is one of the most important promising modern heating techniques. Radio frequency is a heat source that was first described in the middle of the 20th century and was used to melt frozen food and to process and preserve meat product. So the longer wavelength of radio frequency in comparison to the microwave, making it able to penetrate further into the food product, resulting in even more heating. So if you compare it with microwave heating, so this is infrared just now, microwave is here. Oh, okay. So this diagram is inverted, terbalik. Okay. Previously, I've mentioned microwave is somewhere around here, right? Microwave is on the left and infrared is here. Okay, in this case, you look at the radio frequencies on this because it has I'm confusing you guys. I think I need to go back a bit. Okay, so radio frequency is here. Okay, so microwave is here and infrared is here. So don't be confused. Okay, because the diagram is actually inverted. All right, so we are looking into radio frequency heating. I will change that diagram later on. All right. So electromagnetic heating is also is characterized by the ability to generate heat inside the food material by polarizing the guidance of polar diodes. Okay, again, it uses the water molecules inside your food product. So in this way, basically, it heats up the water molecule. So the water molecule will absorb all the energy, and then it will vibrate and move about because it has a higher energy, right? So basically, it eliminates the limits that was imposed by the conventional heating. And electromagnetic heating is relatively quick as the heat is generated within product without the need of heat transfer. So in contrast to conventional heating. So you would have, again, an electrode. So RF power or radio frequency generated by electrical power. So whatever the water molecules that is inside your food product would oscillate and vibrate. Okay, when your food product that has a polar molecule such as water are exposed to alternating current, alternating electric field, dielectric heating occurs. So the polar molecule will have electric dipole moments and polar molecule will align to the electric field. So if you look at this, you were to have two electrodes. So imagine this is all your water molecules that is inside your food product. So since it has absorbed the energy, what it does is basically it will orient itself, or the orientation of orientating itself or reposition themselves. Okay, so this is what we call the dipole rotation. So the positive will move to the positive electrode. So the negative will move to the negative electrode. Okay, and the red molecules here is basically the ionic conductivity. Ionic conductivity are the one that I've mentioned in the microwave heating techniques. Basically, the oscillating movement of ions that is moving forward and backwards in the material that generates heat due to friction. So for radio frequency, you would have two mechanisms. Okay, one is what we call the dipole rotation, and another one is what we call the ionic conduction. So radio frequency heating presents multiple characteristics compared to the conventional heat transfer. It is very important that the electrodes do not contact the food directly when using the radio frequency. You need to avoid formation of Joule heating. Okay, remember before this, we've mentioned ohmic heating. So the electrodes are submerged into your food product. In this case, it's not being submerged, but instead it places at the outside of your food product. Okay, so the technique can be applied to both liquid and of course solid food. And it has been shown that the radio frequency wavelength is greater than the microwave frequency. And because of that, the capacity of radio frequency power to penetrate deeper into food is higher than the conventional microwave, because the heat generated inside the food is uniform and distributed evenly. Right, so the previous study have shown that longer wavelength used in radio frequency heating do not result in any interference or negative effect inside the food, whereas the use of microwave has led to patterns of cold spots inside your food items. And the best part about radio frequency is that the construction of large-scale radio frequency is easier, and it improves the quality of your final product because it has a higher energy usage efficiency, and RF units are also typically less expensive than microwave and incur lower maintenance costs. So this is what it looks like. Remember, the electrodes are on the outside, okay? Food are on the inside, in between your electrodes. On the ohmic heating, the electrodes needs to be inside your food, right? Okay. So this is some of the design for your radio frequency heating. So you can use a thorough field applicator where this is your material, this is the electric field, or you can also use an alternating current with the electrode that looks something like this. So this is your material, and or you can put your electrode something like this. Okay, so your food material will go in between, and the electric field will look something like this. Okay. So this is what one of the study have shown. Okay, this one is a potato. Okay, so if you were to use a static potato that is not moving about, okay, you would have a cold spots and you would have a hot spots, right? But if the potato is rotating, you would have an evenly distributed heat generation inside your potato. So this is one of the experiments that have been done on white pudding. So basically they put, this is the two electrodes, and this is your the white pudding. Okay. If you want to use it for for liquid food, you can also use this, but the electrodes has to be at the side of your vessel instead of submerged into your food product. Okay, so important parameters are basically you need to know your dielectric constant for your food product, because this is an important factor that used to measure the ability of food to store electromagnetic energy and to, of course, measure the property of food material in order to dissipate the energy. So the temperature and frequency plays a very important role in both dipole and ionic mechanism due to an increase in the movement of molecules by increasing frequency and temperature. So other important factors are physical properties of your food product, the thermal properties, the distance between the treated product, the distance of the electrodes, okay, and of course the chemical properties of your food product. So applications, these are some of the applications where you can use radio frequency heating for heating of bread, blanching vegetables, thawing frozen eggs, fruits, vegetable and fish, drying of cookies, sterilization of packaged flour, dry food with poor thermal characteristics. You can dry coffee, nuts, beans, cocoa, and corn grains, and of course the drying method. These are some of the commercialized infrared heating that is being used in the industry at the moment. Okay, so basically your food product will move from one end, it will come out to the other end, okay, using a conveyor. So future research, we want to determine the optimum radio frequency, exposure time, of course, the configuration for heating, for a single food, and of course for a group of similar food. At the same time, the relative impact of radio frequency on food quality and sensory need to be studied with the goal of designing an optimum RF unit for a particular food or group of foods. So this heating of food can be an alternative to pressurization, processing of prepared food, and consumer reheating, with each this situation having different requirement. So hopefully in the future, we would see radio frequency unit replacing the domestic microwave, because RF unit are much more efficient in cooking or warming of food. The current microwave have a single button control for different food that control the cycling of microwave over time. So try to imagine having a RF oven with the similar single button control that can vary the frequency, duration, and cycling of RF in order to maximize the quality and health benefit of that particular food, right? I think that is the end of my presentation for today. I met the 1 hour limit by Dr. Asri.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Nadia, for your nice and excellent presentation. Maybe we are continue to the discussion. Maybe if there are any question from you, you may ask directly to Dr. Nadia, or you can type your answer, your question in the chat box.
Chat box, yes. You may type in Bahasa Malaysia, Bahasa Indonesia, or even in English, I don't mind. I'm able to understand a little bit. Okay.
Okay, maybe for we are waiting for your question. Dr. Nadia, may I ask you about your opinion about hurdle technology? Because today we are moving from the thermal to non-thermal, but we are facing many problems, especially in terms of measurement and how to make sure that this technology is safe for our food, and it also will retain the quality of the food. So
Yes.
what is your opinion about hurdle technology? Maybe
hydro technology.
Hurdle, I mean the combination between
hurdle. Okay,
hurdle,
okay.
yeah, hurdle
Oh,
technology.
yeah, okay, okay. So hurdle technology is very good technology in the sense that it combines a couple of non-thermal technology. For instance, I have done a research on pulse electric field pasteurization of goat milk. Okay, but unfortunately, the pulse electric field pasteurization method alone is not able to inactivate all the pathogenic microorganisms inside the goat milk. And also it was not able to inactivate ALP, alkaline phosphate enzyme inside the milk, the one that will cause detrimental degradation of the milk. So what we did was we incorporate mild heating. So combination of pulse electric field and mild heating was able to lower down the microbial content of the goat milk considerably. And of course, at the same time, it manages to inactivate ALP. So that was the very good part of it. So as at times, non-thermal technology, of course, is the way to go in the future, but often it is still not able to inactivate a lot of the microorganism available. Okay, as we move further on into the new century, I think there's a lot more microorganism, that has emerges. So that is one of the issue that the researchers have to, move very fast, has to, do a lot of experiment at a faster rate to make sure that this non-thermal method are able to inactivate all of this pathogenic microorganism. So hurdle technology, in my opinion, is very, very good. But we need to validate of course, again, the food safety and the food quality. So it needs to have a balance of that.
Okay, maybe it's still we need to study more about this
Yes.
process alone, one by one, and then we combine what will affect the food or not.
Yes.
Maybe in Indonesia, we still facing problem in measurement. So actually, to validate and also to measure time to time, to monitor all the process, we have to get
to be very
Yeah.
to be very honest with you, again, I've mentioned before, our industry, food industry in Malaysia is actually owns by a small and medium enterprise. So they do not have the financial capabilities of buying all these new technologies. So that is why even in Malaysia, although we have the experts for it, for pulse electric field, but I have never seen any food industry use pulse electric field. HPP, yes, high pressure processing are now being used in Malaysia, I think by a couple of in the industry. They produce ready to eat food in container. Okay. So yes, I have seen that. But for pulse electric field, I have not seen. Ultraviolet is being used in the water management system. The water that is being sent from house to house. That one is now currently using ultraviolet technology to kill off the microorganism. But I think because the ultraviolet uses light, so the absorption is quite high when you are dealing with a clear water. But if you are dealing with, juice that has color, that has total soluble solids inside, then that will cause an issue of efficiency of killing all the microorganism. So, yeah, but to be very honest with you, even Malaysia is facing that problem. We do not have a lot of experts. Even if we do, the industry is not how to say it. It's not ready. It's not ready to adopt the technology. Yes.
Maybe same in Indonesia. I think
Yes.
for the new technology like this, they
Yeah.
need to understanding more, and also in terms of economy scale and
True.
yeah.
True. Do you have ohmic heating in Uni Padjadjaran?
No, actually, no. We don't have
No.
ohmic heating, but I have done many study during my bachelor and also master degree. I'm working a lot on ohmic heating.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
But which
For
heating?
yeah, actually, I using omic heating for treated mixed vegetable and fruit juice.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mix the orange juice and carrot juice.
Carrot juice,
Carrot
yes.
juice, yeah. Then
Okay.
I perform using different electric filtering, different electric
Uh-huh.
filtering, and also different frequency. So I have many different, but I work a lot on modeling. So I
Okay.
do omic heating just for modeling, not for
Modeling.
not for
Just to
yeah
understand the modeling part
yeah.
of it.
Okay.
Okay. One of my colleagues is actually doing omic heating study at the moment, but what he does is basically to extract essential oil using
Hmm,
omic heating. So
interesting.
it's quite interesting study, yes. Another colleague of mine is doing omic heating on yogurt production. So because yogurt has a high viscosity, so he's trying to understand the mechanism better. So it is a very interesting technology, so to say, because omic heating is not very much different than conventional heating, but it's still quite new because there's not a lot of people that understand the mechanism part of it,
And
right?
it's also to be very careful because we sometimes I also experience electric shock when
Ah,
I
yes.
experimentation.
True, true. So
Yeah.
so that's why the issue of it is actually how to monitor, especially for a large for a high viscosity food. The issue is to monitor the internal temperature of it. So yeah, electric shock I think is quite normal when doing omic heating.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Maybe we continue student to anyone will
No
ask.
problem.
Okay, maybe all of you, Vicky, Raihan, or
Any
Nopal,
question?
Safa, maybe you have any question or do you want to ask Dr. Nadia about microwave or infrared? Because they have already learned about this thermal in the
Hmm?
previous chapter.
Yes.
So this is actually the fourth, sorry, 13 uh, section of this uh, course. So they
Okay.
have already learned and also maybe they do also practical skill for microwave. So
Okay.
they already extract microwave. Can you share your experience, maybe a novel or others when you work with microwaves last time in the practical skill? Teman-teman bisa menjelaskan mungkin apa yang sudah Anda lakukan dengan praktikum microwave kemarin ya ketika di laboratory session ya dengan Kang Iqbal. Boleh, Safa mungkin bisa menjelaskan.
Yeah. You
Kalau
can
nggak
speak in
salah,
bahasa, tak ada
ya,
masalah.
kalau nggak salah mereka mengekstrak bunga telang menggunakan
Ah,
microwave.
okay.
So they
Using microwave.
extract Clitoria ternatea, maybe in bahasa Malaysia bunga telang, maybe
Bukan telang, yes.
ya sama menggunakan microwave.
Gunakan microwave.
Ya,
Okay. So how's the result? Color retention, okay?
bagaimana
Anyone?
teman-teman? Naufal, maybe or Safa, can you explain more about your works using microwave last time? Safa, maybe or Piki.
Oh ya,
Silahkan pakai
supaya
bahasa Indonesia, itu oke.
Ah, yes.
saya jelaskannya menggunakan bahasa Indonesia gak apa-apa, Bu.
Boleh,
Oke.
boleh. No problem.
Ya. Eh, untuk praktikum sebelumnya itu di minggu lalu tuh kami mengenai microwave ini assisted extraction, Bu.
Okay.
AE ya. Kami itu melakukan beberapa perlakuan terhadap pemanasan dayanya untuk
Uh-huh.
ekstraksinya itu. Nah, untuk larutan yang dicampurkan itu ada larutan etanol dengan bubuk bunga telang, di
Okay.
mana ya, di mana untuk metodenya itu menggunakan ini tadi microwave itu, dan daya yang digunakannya itu ada yang 30%, 50% serta 80% untuk hasilnya
Okay.
sendiri. Ya, untuk hasilnya sendiri itu nanti dipekatkan menggunakan rotary vakum.
Okay.
Ya, hasilnya itu untuk dari segi warnanya itu untuk daya sekitar 30 itu masih berwarna ungu, namun
Okay.
untuk daya sekitar 50 hingga 80 itu sudah berwarna pekat begitu, Bu, untuk warna ungunya itu. Namun untuk
Okay.
warna daya sekitar 30 itu masih agak biru muda. Ya,
Biru muda.
iya.
Okay. Tak ada perubahan warna ya? I mean brown, apa panggil browning, oxidation, tak ada?
Tidak ada, Bu. Kami
Tak
mengamati
ada.
dari segi warnanya.
Okay, that's good. Okay, because pemahaman saya kalau menggunakan heating atau heat method ni, most of the time color akan berubah. Colornya jadi dari biru pekat begitu kadang-kadang menjadi color brown. Because of apa oxidation, because of heating. So jadi tak ada perubahan color ya.
Ya, paling awalnya tuh berubah dari biru, kemudian berubah menjadi ungu warna pekat gitu.
Oh, I see.
Ya.
So menghasilkan bubuk atau powder, right? You
Iya, itu hasil
hasilkan
filtrasi.
powder. Okay, alright, that's good. Okay, using microwave.
Vicky, the result is in high viscous extract or in powder? Di
Hasilnya
ekstrak
hasilnya
pekat
itu
atau powder terakhirnya, hasil akhir.
hasilnya itu kan hasilnya itu berupa cairan gitu, Bu, untuk sudah difiltrasi dengan ampas. Sudah diekstrak.
Okay, okay.
So Dr.
That's
Nadia, only we produce only high or viscous extract. So we
okay.
don't dry the extract to be powder.
So it's not powder lah. So
Not
the
powder,
end
yeah.
product is basically concentrated color of bunga telang. Okay, okay. So basically, what is it for? Apa kegunaan kemudiannya? Sebab you extract di bunga telang dengan etanol tadi kan? So kegunaannya untuk apa ya? Bolehkah digunakan dalam food product?
Mungkin teman-teman yang lain bisa menambahkan. Selain Vicky, kegunaan dari ekstrak bunga telang yang di ekstrak menggunakan etanol itu untuk apa? Nggak ada nih. Okay, Dr. Nadia, maybe I will try to answer. We use extract bunga telang, but using for non-food product.
Okay.
So we develop face mist and also toner, face toner.
Toner.
Yeah, for using Clitoria ternate or bunga telang.
Tapi kalau untuk buat face mask, mukanya tidak biru kah, Ibu?
No, actually
tak.
we
Okay,
just
that's good.
only using a small amount concentration of
Okay,
extract
okay.
because it has an ability to combat acne. Actually,
Okay.
the extract yeah.
Okay, so that's good because previously to combat acne, usually you use turmeric, right?
Kunyit, yeah.
Kunyit, yes. Tapi kunyit kan warnanya kuning. Jadi bila kalau kita pakai tu pun mukanya kuning. Tapi yang ini tak birunya tidak melekat lah kat muka. Okay. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe student can also using other solvent, not only ethanol. Maybe
Yes.
you can use maybe N-hexan because
N-hexan.
if you want to use the bunga telang extract for food, because we use for coloring, food coloring.
Okay.
If ethanol, actually, maybe we cannot evaporate all the solvent. So inside of the extract, we still have high amount of ethanol.
Yeah,
For food, I think it's not
it's
good
not,
because we
yeah,
have,
it's not safe to
yes,
use
not
it.
safe also, yeah. In terms
Okay.
of halal and other
Yes.
agriculture.
All right, but if you are able to extract the color and make it into powder, I think that's going to be very good, because in Malaysia there's this negeri Kelantan, kalau you tahu there's this one district in Malaysia named Kelantan. They use a lot of bunga telang to produce nasi kerabu.
Yeah,
Yes, nasi kerabu they call it. Yes. Yeah, so they use a lot of that bunga telang, but at the moment what they do is basically they just put the bunga telang into a hot water, so let it seep, and then you get the color, and then you put it inside your rice. So yeah, the color is quite nice, but I don't think it has a very high nutritional benefits, because you have extract all the color using a hot water, right? So if you could put it into a powder form, then it's very good. That's going to be amazing.
Yeah. Actually, we have already do research about the bunga telang dehydration by using food dehydrator, and we have select the optimum condition for this for using the product.
Okay,
So,
can you package them?
yeah.
Okay, do you plan to package? Because you know why? Dekat di Malaysia, there's one kita panggil supermarket yang agak high end, macam jual barang-barang yang mahal daripada overseas. So dia ada jual bunga telang yang dehydrated dalam jar, dalam botol kaca. So jualan harganya sangat mahal, Ibu. So I think if you guys could package them and sell it, that would be very good. Because harga saya pun tak berapa, I don't use it a lot, so I don't buy it, but it's there. I don't know what they use it for. But satu balang kaca dalam the size this big, just very very small, besar ini, dalam harga RM15 Malaysia. So quite expensive juga. So that's good kalau you dah dapat optimum condition for it.
Yeah, but we still try in kami mengeringkannya di dalam bentuk bunga.
Yes. Dalam bentuk bunganya, betul.
Dalam bentuk bunganya. Then we green
okay.
Yeah, to be powder. So
you grind them into powder. I
That's
see. Okay. The one I mentioned that was being sold in the jar bottle, that one is still in flower form. Masih lagi dalam bentuk bunga. So tapi dehydrated lah. I see. Okay. That's good. I seem to notice that a lot of Indonesian university produces a lot of commercialized product. Do you do that? I mean, saya nampak macam banyak universiti di Indonesia yang menghasilkan produk hasilan dari penyelidikan. Di Malaysia tak berapa banyak itu, Ibu. Kita banyak fokus pada fundamental research. Jadi kita produce result dari segi factors, parameters, temperature, time, everything. Tapi kita tak optimum dan tak menghasilkan produk sangat.
In Pajajaran University, kami diharuskan untuk melanjutkan riset itu ke produk hilirisasi. So that's why maybe for edible flower dalam bentuk kering itu kami rencanakan untuk beberapa produk food maupun non food. Jadi we have already the patent punya paten untuk itu, sehingga kami dituntut untuk menghasilkan produk dan bermitra dengan industri.
So ada industri yang that took up your bunga telang produk?
Sampai saat ini bunga telang belum, tapi
Belum
sedang
ya.
dalam proses dengan dengan farmasi faculty. So dengan
Okay.
farmasi beliau mengembangkan bahan baku obat alami dan bunga telang juga digunakan juga untuk obat. Jadi saat
Yes.
ini sedang diarahkan
Hasil.
ke sana. Oh, ya.
Okay.
Bunga telang, bunga rosella, rosel,
Roselle, yes.
dan maybe ada bunga anyelir, maybe in bahasa Inggris anyelir,
And then,
anyelir, maybe.
how do you spell them? Sorry.
Teman-teman ada yang tahu anyelir, maybe?
Anyalit, how?
Anyelir,
Macam mana pronounce dia punya spellingnya?
anyelir, anyelir.
Anyelir. Oh, anyelir.
Ya,
Oh, I'm not sure.
bahasa Inggrisnya atau ini juga sangat sedang diminati dan juga kemarin ada bunga yang especially dipesan oleh orang-orang Taiwan itu we produce in Garut. Garut is a region near of in Unpad, so we need to collaborate with the farmer because we produce many edible flowers, and then we need to take part in terms of dehydration because
Is anyalir same thing as carnation? Is it bunga carnation? No.
No,
Bunga kewa.
bunga. Is there any peacock flower? Peacock
flower.
Peacock flower.
I see. Okay.
Bunga anyalir.
In Malaysia, the one that is taking up that is big and that is very popular now is sacha inci. Yes.
Minyak sacha inci.
Sacha inci, yes. Because it has been known to have a very high omega-3 that is very beneficial for us. So it is being extracted as an oil form and they put it into a capsule. So yeah, sacha inci in Malaysia, moringa is quite popular. But flower is not quite popular here. There's not a lot of flower that is being used in research. But for sacha inci, moringa, lemongrass, macam ibu ada buat research on jeruk purut kan? Yes, extract lime-nya. Yes. Dekat Malaysia pun agak popular. Other than that, Roselle ada juga. Tapi tak berapa banyak because I don't know. Ke Roselle orang tak banyak pakai, tak banyak guna sangat. But a lot of research mainly on sacha inci, moringa because of the protein. And now is taking notice is seaweed product. Kalau ibu pernah nampak Azolla pinnata.
Azolla pinnata.
Yes.
Pinnata, maybe in Indonesia we know as tumbuhan paku.
Tumbuhan paku air. Yes. Paku air. Betul. Yes. Because it's easy to grow and it is used for animal feed. So yes, we grow a lot of Azolla pinnata, and the new one is Kaulerpa. This one is a green seaweed because it grows very fast, but it doesn't use a lot of space. It grows in seawater. So basically, what it does is what I meant by dia bukan menggunakan ruang yang sangat besar tau ibu. Kalau dia tumbuh banyak in terms of density in one small space. But it doesn't use a lot of surface water. So for the community in Sabah, in Borneo, they have a lot of water surrounding them, right? So we encourage them to grow Kaulerpa, the green seaweed, because it's now being used we dehydrate them using infrared, and then we sell them to the Europe countries. Because in Europe they like to have this seaweed, because to them seaweed is highly nutritional, and because when they hydrate them back in water, the best part is this is what we get comments from the European customer. They mentioned that they can still taste the saltiness of that seaweed because it was being grown in the seawater. Masih lagi boleh rasa garamnya tu. Jadi to them they perceive as freshness in that sense. That is why kita dehydrate and kita jual di Europe countries lah. So I think it's a good project juga kalau ibu dekat dengan body of water. If sorry, kalau minta maaf ya, saya tak berapa tahu geografi Indonesia. Jadi Pajajaran ni dekat dengan sea water tak? Dekatnya dengan pantai ke ibu?
Kalau untuk Pajajaran yang di bagian apa, Pangandaran
Sejak
itu we have many campus. So we
Oh.
jadi kampus kami yang di kampus Unpad Pajajaran itu dekat pantai. Tapi kalau ini yang kami ini yang teknik pertanian kita dekat di lokasi kota Bandung. Jadi di
Kota
tengah
Bandung,
di
I
bagian
see.
cekungan. Jadi actually
Okay.
it's not tidak ada daerah perairan.
Jadi ya itu kawasan tinggi ya ibu?
Kawasan ya.
Kawasan tinggi.
Tinggi.
Okay. Okay.
But anyway, it's very nice for sharing the information about Kaulerpa and
Kaulerpa.
Pinasa. Okay, yeah. Maybe student, if you want to know more about this kind, and then you want to research Aldolaa
Yes.
Pinasa and Kaulerpa for your
Research.
next research. Okay.
Kaulerpa is very good if you want to extract the chlorophyll part of it. So you know how back in I think 5-10 years ago, chlorophyll water or chlorophyll drinks was very popular. So yeah, you can extract the chlorophyll using microwave extraction. You can also use other type of extraction that you have available in Uni Pajajaran. So yes.
Okay, Dr. Nadia. I'm back to the non-thermal again.
Okay.
From your presentation, yeah, the requirement of products that can be treated by microwave, infrared, and radio frequency. You mentioned that they should have water molecule inside the product.
Yes.
So how about the product that's rich in protein or fats? It can be processed using this method, or if the product is high in protein or high in fats, not in water. So
okay. Okay, for we have mentioned infrared, radio frequency has a longer wavelength in comparison to the infrared, right? Okay, so the penetration depth or the absorption wavelength absorption by your food is actually increasing. So if you were to have water, but let's say the fat content is also equally a lot in your food product, so the absorption would be higher. Although it will still need water for it to absorb the energy, for it to absorb the wavelength, and for it to have that high energy to create the temperature rise to kill off the microorganism. But having fat content in that product also helps. So I think in a sense, if you want to use radio frequency or infrared, maybe you need to study first the composition of that food. So you need to see the composition of water in terms of moisture content. You need to study the composition of lipids and protein and carbohydrates. So then all this composition would help each other in terms of absorbing the wavelength. I hope that
Thank you
answers your
so much.
question.
Yeah, because we have already learned, maybe student also, they learn about physical chemical characteristic of wood.
Okay.
When we using ohmic heating, we need to put electrical conductivity. But
Yes.
if we want to use radio frequency or infrared heating, so the properties that we need uh, to specify is the electric properties, right?
Yes.
Uh,
Dielectric properties.
Dielectric
True.
properties. Then.
Yes.
So ya teman-teman mahasiswa, kalau Anda kemarin sudah belajar karakteristik bahan hasil pertanian or physicochemical characteristic of agricultural product, ketika Anda menggunakan microwave itu yang menggunakan ohmic, maaf, itu Anda menggunakan hambatan atau electrical conductivity, konduktivitas
Yes.
listriknya. Tapi kalau Anda mau memproses menggunakan radio frekuensi atau infrared heating, yang digunakan propertiesnya adalah dielectric properties dari food. Dan Dr. Nadia, maybe if we want to measure the dielectric properties of food, for example, what is the equipment that can be used for detect? For electrical conductivity, we use electrical conductivity meter. Conductivity meter. But for
Okay.
the electric
Okay.
properties, can we use some equipment?
Okay. I need to. At the moment, I forgot the name of it. Okay. Yeah. How? Hold on, yeah. I forgot the name of it.
Because we want to maybe to propose this equipment to faculty to support the research about
Okay.
measurement tools.
Okay. One of the method is actually we put our food product into a water, and then we put a sensor. So from that sensor itself, and then we measure the resonant frequency and the resonant frequency of it. Another method is actually, I forgot the very name of it actually, the equipment name. Hold on. Oh, yeah, it's actually measuring what we call the coaxial probe.
Probes.
Probes, yes. We use what we call an open-ended coaxial probe. Okay, let me open-ended coaxial probe. Okay, so that is what we use. It's basically an inner conductor and outer conductor, and it has a dielectric material separating the two. So you would have is very simple equipment that you can measure, and then it will come out in terms of sensor, in terms of a graph that will measure the dielectric properties of the food. But I forgot the specific name or the brand for it, if you want to know. It needs what we call an inner conductor, outer conductor, and in between is in between. Okay, and a dielectric material. Okay. So this is how it measures. So then it will be you'll be connected to a sensor profiling that will give out a graph, and from there we can read the graph to measure the dielectric properties of the food.
And it can be used only for liquid or solid?
Yes, at the moment we only use for liquid, or maybe even high viscosity liquid product like yogurt.
Okay, guys, student, do you still have any question about this non-thermal process, or you may ask about your maybe your comparison between your lab skill, laboratorium skill, ketika Anda praktikum, ketika Anda menggunakan proses-proses non-thermal, apakah yang yang terjadi di dalam kegiatan kalian gitu ya. I want to ask Dr. Nadia, if we using infrared heating or maybe radio frequency heating, over processing, how we can avoid the over processing. So can we detect over processing?
Overprocessing.
Yeah.
Yes.
In
I think in both radio frequency and infrared, it's easier for you to detect overprocessing, especially once you have seen your product that is a dry product. Like if you were to treat orange juice, you can see that the orange juice is no longer there. Or maybe if you were to use solid food, it has turned into brown color and a bit dehydrated. So that is what we know that we are overprocessing them. But at the end of the day, what we need to do is actually find the optimal temperature of it and try to avoid very, very high temperature, because degradation of nutritional profile will happen at that time. So any color changes, I think the key important thing to measure any overprocessing is color changes. So if it looks, sometimes water content, you need to test them, right? But color, we can view them visually. You can see using your eyes. If the color has already turned into, brownish color, or been from yellow to a bit darker color, then you know that you are already overprocessing your food product.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe in except color, maybe if we process food, maybe we can also determine the browning index, maybe
Browning index,
browning
yes.
index for ya. Oke, oke, student, kayaknya belum ada yang bertanya. Boleh dalam bahasa mungkin masih ada beberapa waktu ke depan. Silahkan, saya buka kembali. Widya barangkali, Afifah, Raihan, anyone mungkin mau bertanya ke Dr. Nadia. Apakah sudah ada yang dimengerti atau ada part-part yang mungkin Anda ingin ditanyakan kembali ya, karena untuk proses non-thermal ini memang emerging, masih baru ya, mungkin
Masih
ada
baru.
juga pro dan kontra gitu ya terkait seperti tadi penggunaan infrared. Maybe in Indonesia, I think mungkin sama dengan di Malaysia juga, belum ada industri yang tertarik untuk menggunakan infrared, bukan for dehydration, untuk pengeringan. Mereka belum tertarik untuk menggunakan mesin pengering yang menggunakan infrared seperti itu. Karena di sini masih menggunakan thermal, jadi menggunakan oven, bahkan ada juga yang menggunakan proses roasting yang sangat konvensional.
I think satu masalah yang is being faced by Malaysians is not understanding what is non-thermal. I think because there's a lot of technologies that is being categorized as non-thermal, they may not understand the mechanism of each of the technology. For instance, today we only talk about ohmic heating, radio frequency, and infrared frequency. But then again, you need to understand each of the mechanism that entails and apa kegunaannya. Like Kalau you want to dry, which is the best method to use? So I think bukan saja di Indonesia, jadi di Malaysia pun juga uh, it's about understanding the mechanism of it and bagaimana untuk tahu setiap produk itu lebih sesuai gunanya teknologi apa. Like kalau you ada fruit juice, you nak pasteurize, it's good to use omic heating. We can kalau kita sebagai expert kita boleh recommend. Tapi kalau sebagai orang luaran ataupun orang industri, kadang-kadang orang tak faham. Jadi mereka agak susah untuk tertarik atau menerima new teknologi sebab mereka tidak faham. Jadi even for the students, I think what you can do for today, maybe I, did not explain better, but you can go through my slides and you can read them and try to understand what is the mechanism that lies between each of the technology. How each of this technology uses the wavelength to impact the food quality. How does it use the wavelength to actually kill off the microorganism? So these are the very important things that you need to learn actually.
Yes, I agree with you, Dr. Nadia. So students should have better understanding for this process. And then you maybe student can also learn about the equipment and then about the application. And for the presentation, they have to present which topic. Actually, we have ada tiga atau 4 kelompok ya. Mohon maaf, Naufal untuk kelompok praktikumnya ada berapa ya? We want to
ada 4 kelompok.
Ada 4 kelompok. Dr. Nadia. Jadi ada 4 kelompok. Jadi untuk pokok bahasan hari ini akan ditugaskan untuk 2 kelompok. Kemudian untuk bahasan minggu depan, Dr. Nadia will present a different topic. Ada 2 kelompok lagi yang akan mengambil tema tersebut. So,
Okay.
Ya,
Boleh?
di tanggal 14 ketika presentasi, jadi ada 4 kelompok dengan 2 tema tentang infrared dan radiofrekuensi. Kemudian 1 topik lagi itu akan dibawakan oleh 2 kelompok yang materinya itu akan diberikan oleh Dr. Nadia di minggu depan.
Okay.
Ya, jadi teman-teman seperti itu ya. Mungkin kelompok maybe for this kelompok 1, 2, kelompok 1 dan 2, Anda mendapatkan tugas untuk mempresentasikan aplikasi dari infrared dan juga radiofrekuensi. Seperti itu ya, Dr. Nadia.
Boleh.
Kelompok
Yes.
1, 2 tugasnya hari ini, kelompok 3, 4 itu materinya yang minggu depan.
Atau kalau radio frekuensi is a bit similar to infrared, mungkin satu kelompok boleh pilih antara radio frekuensi atau infrared, the other one buat omic heating. Yes.
Oke.
Nanti
disampaikan ke saya ya, Noval, di kelompok 1 misalkan radio frekuensi dan infrared, kelompok 2-nya omic heating, seperti itu. Dan yang untuk kelompok 3, 4 itu minggu depan kita akan menyimak presentasi dari Dr. Nadia. Oke. Silakan, ada lagi mahasiswa ada yang bertanya terkait penugasan? Ada yang ingin bertanya tentang penugasan? Mungkin apa saja yang perlu dicantumkan? Apakah introduction, presentasi in bahasa Inggris ya, teman-teman, Dr. Nadia. So I want to push the students to present in bahasa Inggris, in English. So
understand, no problem.
Because ini juga merupakan suatu media ya mahasiswa untuk mengasah kemampuan bahasa Inggrisnya karena they already I think in 6 semester, so sudah semester 6, tinggal beberapa saat lagi, tinggal 1 tahun lagi untuk Anda menjadi sarjana, jadi
graduan.
For to be bachelor degree. So I think it's time to untuk menguatkan kembali bahasa Inggrisnya ya. Jadi teman-teman nanti presentasinya dalam bahasa Inggris, disusun slide-nya sedemikian rupa for approximately 15 to 20 minutes. Ya, Dr. Nadia.
Yes.
15 maybe 20 minutes. Then continue by Q&A.
Q&A session.
Q&A session. Oke, seperti itu ya mahasiswa semuanya. Ada yang mau ditanyakan? Jelas ya, seperti yang waktu mata kuliah teknik pengeringan. Sama ya, kurang lebih seperti itu. Presentasi, kemudian Q&A, dan kami akan memberikan skor ya, atau we will give you score for the presentation and also for the discussion.
Yes.
Okay, is there any question, or if not, maybe because of the time, 14:77. Okay, Dr. Nadia, maybe can you give some conclusion to the student, or maybe the last statement for infrared and also radio frequency?
Okay. As I've mentioned before, the most important thing is understanding each of the technology mechanism, because the main objective of using non-thermal or novel thermal treatment is to kill off microorganisms. So you need to understand how does each of the technology kills off those microorganisms, and how that technology also can affect the physicochemical properties of the food that you treat. Okay, so it's very important for you to understand that. In order for you to understand that, you need to list down all the parameters involved. Okay, so based on each of the technology, it has different parameters. Of course, at the end of the day, if you see there's a very how do I say it, same parameters that come up for each of the technology, which is temperature and holding time, because these are the two crucial parameters in order for you to find out your technology is efficient in killing off the microorganism, and also do not alter the nutritional value of your product. Okay, so that is very important. So that's all from me. Thank you very much, Dr. Asri, for today.
You're welcome, Dr. Nadia. Thank you so much for your insightful presentation. And we will see you again
Next week.
Yeah, next week.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you
Alright.
so much. And for
Okay.
the student, can you please open your camera? We will have a screenshot for untuk pelaporan praktisi mengajar di Unpad ya. Jadi dimohon untuk membuka apa kamera. Oke, ayo semuanya segera. Yang belum, Aina, Vicky, Afifah, yang lainnya ditunggu sebentar lagi. Priscilla mungkin belum. Vicky, Jessie, silahkan. Safa, silahkan dibuka terlebih dahulu.